right, how we doing, guys? Sam here with you on Tuesday, November 6th. And so, as it's a traditional day, as I like to remind people, we poll the members, we let them choose this. So that's how we end up with the assets that we analyze. So we did some polling this morning. I have two, one currency pair, and then the Nasdaq 100. So I've got the Nasdaq futures. This is the continuous contract up. This is a daily session here. Now, there's a daily chart. So there's a few things to note here that I thought would be worth exploring. So one thing is, I've got the wolf range on here. So I just want to encourage you guys to use this. This is a very effective tool. So let me just to demonstrate here. So I'm going all the way back to one of our 2009 lows here. So if I just grab this and I go up to where I get my first little area of resistance here. So if this is our first completed one wave here. So note what we get here. So here's the range that I'm proposing here. So if I were looking at an Elliott count, I'd be digging out some, it looks like I've got some sort of pivot here, and then I retrace. Well, note how that frames the market. Let me open this up a little bit here. So here's the low. Here's the range, here's the 50, here's the next 50, here's the 100. Now we've gone up and through that, so we may need to expand the range, but this is just a very powerful tool to just get a basic analysis of the market. So swing low, swing high, here's exactly 100% of the range where we run into this reaction here. Now on a daily chart, those are pretty substantial reactions. So you look at that and you think, okay, so that clearly was the initial range of the market. Now we've gone up here. We do have the 300% of that range. But what I would do is now expand the range. So since I have this reaction here, now I would go up to this where I got that reaction. If I put it right on there. All right, so here's the new range. So note what happens here. So the prior resistance we were using now becomes the 50. Here becomes the entire new range, and note where we are here. Here's the 50 of that range, and then so if I scroll this down, you can see if we're going to rally from this, that would be the next likely target, 100% of this initial range. So the pivot here at the 50 is kind of interesting. So with that established now as a potential candidate for the new range, I would then, let's go down. Let's go to a 3 hour, see how that looks. All right, so we know that's up there. Let me reset here. 3 hour, that may be too much for us. So let's get this here. So this is the count. Now we've been through this several times as we actually had fairly good technical confluence up here in a video that was 2-3 weeks ago. Caught that pretty nicely. So we've got a potentially now completed count. We've got this reaction here. So you can see here's the 50 from the wolf range. So I'm going to take that off since we've just got that established just to clear up the chart. I'm going to take this to let's go to a 2 hour. We can see this a little better. All right, so from our swing high here, well, we've got a nice clean 3-wave structure. Now, it's a little problematic here. So at first glance, it'd be very tempting to go A, B, C. Oh, we're good. Correction's done. And maybe we've got a one wave going in and we're off to new highs. Well, not so fast on that. So again, I've just got wolf tool here. So I'm just going to use the wolf range. And from my pivot high here, let's see here. So that's maybe no come down to this swing here. Reaction at the 50, kind of interesting. So that's potentially now maybe the new range here, so I would look at that. But then I'm also going to look here coming both directions here. So so note here as we come right into the Vegas wave, right? Do you see that, right? So nice rotation there as we head down. So having seen that here in this little reaction here, there's a couple of different ways you might measure here, looking for where the initial reaction is. So this is our first little pivot here. Now this looks pretty good. So note here we get the 100%. So do you see what I'm using here? There's the first little pivot, then we get the reaction. So the initial range, you're always looking once you've got enough history to try and get some sense of where are we seeing the responses, right? So that's fairly solid right there. So the fact that I get the start of my B wave at 100% of that range, that tells me that that's likely the range. So I'm going to pull down to this one. So that's why I use that pivot. So here, yeah, we get through the 50, but I'm not going to miss any 50s. So that's why I like that. So it's a good, just if you're trying to just get a handle on where we are in the market. So of course we do the same thing coming back the other direction. So get that right on there from that low. All right, so do you see that? What have we done? Exactly a 50. So we don't have the, so we could do the same thing with, we could just use our traditional measured move. We could go up here. Well, actually, I can just do it this way. So let me just change the template to measured move, right? So here's the 50, so we get the algo target, right? So it's just it's a nice way to get a sense of where the market's responding. And if you get that range, then you can apply some Gann tools, as we've been exploring some of those, or just demonstrating how to use those here. So right now, there is no reason to anticipate anything other than realization of that target, right? So there it is, right? No reason to think otherwise. So with that established here, then we kind of look at it and think, all right, do I have an Elliott count? Well, I've got this nice big ABC, but certainly it's possible that that's just the A wave. So we've completed an ABC of an A wave. Right, so then you're thinking, maybe a flat. So if we're going to go 3, 3, 5, this is going to need to get a little further. So if I put so let me, having demonstrated that, and with this established, so we do the same thing. If I'm coming here, we come down this way, so you can see here. So do you note what we're doing? We're just bouncing. So this is not terribly surprising with the election today. So we are caught in a fib fight. Right, so algo's buying here, algo's selling here. So we're just bouncing from 50 to 50. Right, so again, another example of how that wolf range tool can be effective is you're going to identify all these 50s. So that's all we've got. And likely, this is we're going to resolve based on the results that we see. Right, so certainly there's likely to be a reaction in the market based on what the results look like at the end of the night. So this is kind of interesting. So this 50 here, note that as we look at it now, this 50 has a target here just in front of the 618. So if we're going to continue to rally here throughout the remainder of the day, well, I'm on a 2-hour, well, we might get some juice out of that. So that would be an area of interest up here. So I'd certainly be paying attention if we come up here. Now, take note here, we do have this low volume node on the other side, but we have this nice big fat cluster here. So if we're just looking at where we might anticipate market acceptance here, right? So this is a reasonable spot. If you're comfortable going short in the Nasdaq, that's not a bad looking setup right there. Right, so in effect, right, so you're kind of late to the party here on this buy. So, all right, so of course, get that hot. So what happens the next time we get to this 50? So you can, of course, this is always a good idea to wick off these prior levels as potential resistance points. So you can see here a prior low potentially. Now let's look how many times that kicked in as resistance. So if we can get through that now, so we've got low volume here. So where do we come back to market acceptance? So this is a reasonable spot to be looking for a short with a pretty nice looking risk reward. So if you're comfortable with that here, so if we just go on the other side of the 65, let's open this up so we can see it a little better. If we're going to go to target there, well, there's 11 to 1 in the Nasdaq. Pretty juicy, right? So you're kind of late. Again, you're late to the buy side here, but you've got this nice sell side here that sets up rather nicely, giving you an 11 to 1 trade here with relatively low risk. Right? It's always a function of size there, but that's a reasonable place to be looking for an entry with a tight exit point. All right, so something to consider. So let's pull that off here just to clear this out. So this, all right, so next significant event is do we retest here if we get through? This is the likely target, as we'd be the algo target sitting right there, likely to get a reaction. So you've got the benefit of confluence here. So we have the wolf range, we've got our 618, we've got our golden zone, we've also got this prior pivot right here. Remember when we looked at that, that was when we were looking at the wolf range. That one caught it perfectly. So range expansion. So you've got a lot of pretty good confluence here if we're going to get a reaction based on the results. So you can get potentially a buy the rumor, sell the fact kind of a scenario setting up here. So I'd be paying attention to that level up there. I would certainly want an alert to go off. Now, but likely if we're going to come up and hit this is going to happen after hours. Right? So you may not be able to trade it depending on where you trade, but something to watch for. So I kind of like that here. Now, if we go down to it, I'll show you one other thing, just because it's very tempting to think that, oh, I've got a 1-2 going in. Well, a deeper dive into that structure here is not particularly friendly to that. So this is where we have some problems with the Elliott count. So let's look at this. So I may have to 30-minute. I think we can get it here. So let me just zoom into this section right here, because you're at first glance, this looks quite promising. So if I use my alternate tools and I say, oh, okay, looks like maybe, see, I've got it wicked off. Maybe that's a 1. Here's my 2. We know it was an exact 50. Well, here's my high probability zone for a third. We go literally right to it. So you think, okay, well, so this at first glance you might think, oh, okay, I got it. 1, 2. Here, oh, right into the pocket. There's my 3. Here's my 4. Well, what's the problem with that 5? Right, we can't finish a 5 with a 3. So then I went all the way down to the, boy, I don't like to go below the 15-minute. There's just, even going down to the 5-minute, you're really stretching to get 5 out of that. Let's see if I can find it. So you'd have to count it this way. So if this is the 4, you'd have to go 1, 2. Shit, that doesn't work. Well, so maybe you could go, you can't, there's just no way to count this. So even if you're trying to, let me get this, even if you're trying to get this into a 1, 2, some sort of 3, 4, 5, boy, it's really a, let's take this down. That's way too big. Let's go yellow so it stands out. Okay, so can we, maybe, but what do you do with this? Right, so you can't go A, B, C because we don't have a diagonal. So it's a bit of a problem from an Elliott trading perspective as to what you've got there. So then you might say, well, is it technical? If I go up here to the pivot, well, we go 7, 8, 6, we blow through the first. It's just not great. So it's a bit of a problem here in terms of how do I get a resolving count here? How do I finish that count? If it's 3, 4, 1, 2, boy, it doesn't fit, right? So it's a bit of a problem. So you got to pull up back from that and go, okay, well, wait a minute. What else could be going on there? I can't get a clean count out of that. Now, you could say, well, this is always the conundrum that you have to consider. So it's perfectly, look, we almost get the, pull this off of here. It sure has the structure of it, but if you dig into that subdivision, you got a problem, right? You can't resolve that with a motive wave. You can't get a diagonal. You really force fit something, but that'll tend to bite you in the ass if you try and do that. So therein lies the conundrum of the Elliottian. What do you do if you can't resolve that count? So maybe you have to, even this way, if you're thinking, oh, well, maybe the 3's up here and this is the 4. So you run into the same problem. So even if you look at that subdivision, you think, okay, well, maybe I got 1, 2, this would be the 3, this is the 4. You have that same problem. You've got a 3-wave. Now there is a lot of thinking that there's another Elliott. They have the opinion that we move much more in 3-wave structures than 5. But then that's the idea of. You're looking for evidence to validate what you see. So, oh, okay, well, maybe I can allow for an ABC in there. Well, you can't, not in a third. Right? We've got to have an impulse there, and we don't get it. So it's a bit of a problem. So first thought is, well, okay, well, then I got to pull out to a larger time frame, and something happened here, but I'm not prepared to call this my 1 wave or a 3 into a 5 because I can't get the subdivision to work. So one choice is you say, all right, until I can get confidence in what I'm seeing here, no trade. Nothing wrong with that, right? Nothing wrong with being conservative because you can't get the count to fit, right? So if it doesn't fit, what do, right? Do you trade it anyway? All right. What else is there? So as I like to remind you, Elliott is always the last thing that I look at. So what do we see here? All right, here's our perfect. Get this here. Is it golden? Yeah. Well, no, we broke it. Let's get this right on that pivot. Oh, I stand corrected. Right? So we have a perfect golden corner pocket. Let's make sure I'm right on this. All right, we change time zones, or time frames, I should say. Let's get this down. You got to tighten these up, as always the case. You want them to be spot on. So that looks good here. Okay, so let me pull back out here so we can see it. All right, so no reason not to take this trade, but this kind of leads you back into this. And then the problem child right there. What do you do with that three wave? All right, but did I get that? Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, so here's your 80%. We got median line right there. Now we fail median line here. We fail to get back there as we roll over. But here's the 80% realized. All right, so you do have that there, and then you might look at that and say, well, do I want to reconfigure this here this way? Is this doing anything for me? Well, no matter how I slice that, pull that off. Even here, still, it's not quite there. So then the channel, maybe we can work something like this. Still, same problem. I can't resolve this with an Elliott count that works. It's just not there. So you can say, well, screw the Elliott. That's one. Yeah, as I said, it's not the most important. So we can see we've got a perfect 50 here. So if I pull down from here to here, right, so there's our to the tick 50. Right, so let's pull that one off. Right, so we saw that we have that algo target up here at the 618 from up above. So you might look at it this way and say, okay, well if that is some completed pattern that I can't figure out, all right, well, we certainly have a potential perfect corner pocket right here. Nothing wrong with that, right? How good? I mean, you're a little late, so that was a chance to add. Looks like that's another 50 there. So from this pivot, well, between the 50 and the 618, second target to the tick. So are we going to keep going? So maybe that's you're not far enough to really call that anything other than three wave, right? So this, right? Remember, you're going to have a 50 coming back the other direction. So there's the 50. So we're in between the 618. So if that's going to roll over here on that resistance, well, now you got this target down here right on top of the 618. So there's just too many different ways. But right now, off of that 50, it's bull's ball. Right? You got to allow for that. There's no reason to assume that won't continue. Now, the tell will be, can we get through that 618? As we come up to it here, can we get through it? Then that would suggest that we're off to that target. So, but I don't even like putting that count there because it's not valid. So the only other thing that I would look at here, so you do have this geometry. I would keep this in play since we have that contender there. So look how nicely that frames it. Okay, so here's our corner pocket right to the 50 to the tick. Here's our target right as we approach the median line. Right, with this support zone. So right now it's, I think, bull's ball. You could be you could be a buyer there. It's not terrible if you're a buyer right here. Here's your target up here. You gotta have to give that a little more room. So there's 4-1. If you went underneath the point of control, you can get 7-1 there. Now that's a little close, and you're not really doing anything other than trading your pocketbook. If you went underneath here, so on the assumption here that all of this market acceptance here should be support, and that if we're going to stay bullish, that a move from here to here probable. So we got a lot of support here, point of control here. So you want to give that a little bit room. Well, there's 4-1, and that's if you're buying it now. Not terrible, right? Absolutely. You know exactly where to get out. You know where your target is, and you know where you invalidate. So if we start to break down here, well, here's the next target down here. Right, so that's this 618. So you got a real fib fight here. I'd be surprised if we get a lot of confirmation out of this ahead of the election results. I think there'll be some, as we go into the afternoon, I think we're likely to go quiet, but trying to predict what's going to happen in the market. For all I know, we're at that target by the end of the day. It's very hard to tell. So there is a long trade here if you're comfortable riding that into the election results. I would tell you for a fresh trade going into an election night, risky because if you get a surprise, you're likely to get a pretty severe reaction. right, if the market doesn't get what it's already factored into the pricing. So, what is that telling you? If we were to go there today, what is that telling you about what the market is anticipating about the results? I would tell you that trying to predict that and read into that is a fool's game. Let the market show you, right? Because it'll often do the exact opposite of whatever you think it might do based on whatever results you think are likely to happen tonight. It's very hard to try and be rational about what you think the market's going to do in the short term. Now, long term, different story. But in the very short term, in terms of the projection of that trade, high risk to take that, to put on a fresh long going into the election results. So I'd be cautious there, but you've got some technical pivots to work with. So ideally you let the results come out and see how the market responds. That's what I would suggest doing. But it is kind of interesting where we are technically. So pulling back out to that 3 hours and getting in touch. So again, back where I started with all of that, we're basically just sitting in a fib fight. Right, so the algo sells and algo buys on both sides of it. They're going to wait, right? One side will win, right? One side always wins. So eventually this would be in that area of interest that I'd be looking for if I got a reaction up here and then I saw some sort of a pivot reaction here. There's good signs here that would be likely resistance as based on what we went through, where we started, right? So right here, thus this would be an area of interest, right? For the short, not for the long. Right, so if you're a buyer here, that's your target to take profit. If you're looking for a fresh entry on the sell, you could sell it here with a stop on the other side of the 65. All right, guys, kind of interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that develops. All right, with that, I will wrap. Just a reminder, we've got a couple of new things that we're offering. We're working on trying to set up a free trial of the membership. I think we're fairly close for that to be coming. So, yeah, we do have the free Discord, but we're working on trying to get set up a trial program for the members Discord where you wouldn't have full access, but at least you can come into the main Discord and kind of get a feel and connect with some other traders, ask some questions, connect with the senseis. So we're working on bringing that to you hopefully within the next few days. All right, guys, that's it for now. Back to you in a minute.